What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the FPL Gameweek 1 preview. So a bit like the team selection video yesterday, I do this video every single game week throughout the season for 38 game weeks. So if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do and hit that like button as well. For this one, because there's obviously been so much preseason content in terms of like best mids, best forwards, comparisons with loads of different players, I've turned this one into a bit more of a massive Q&A instead. But going forward, it will go to the normal format for those of you that watched last season as well. So like I said, hit that subscribe button. Make sure to check out Fantasy Football Scout, who I've partnered with for this video. Link in the description below, and I'll talk about them a little bit later. Otherwise, let's jump into it. Okay, so these questions have come from either YouTube or Twitter. So obviously, make sure you're subscribed to YouTube. Make sure you're following me on Twitter as well. So first question's about kind of what kind of players should we pick? Like long-term players, players that we know are going to be nailed, get lots of minutes, or maybe shorter-term players who might have an increase in minutes at the start. So the example is Jota and Mahrez, but who also later on in the season might be a rotation risk. And so this is just my opinion, obviously. You can do what you want with your team. You can have as many risks and stuff as you want. I would look to kind of keep it to a minimum, the amount that you have. Like if you've got Mahrez and Jota, I'm already thinking that's two players that in a few weeks I might want to start moving on if I start to see a reduction in minutes. Ultimately, minutes are almost king in FPL, right? Yes, I like to look at stats like expected goals, expected assists, and they are important, but that needs to tally up with minutes. So the player's not on the pitch, they can't get you points, right? Which is a fairly simple thing to think about. So definitely have a lot of players in that are going to get you kind of 80 to 90 minutes would be nice. Like players like Bruno Fernandes, Salah, 80 to 90 minutes most weeks, that is proper decent. But you can have the odd punt in there that is a little bit more explosive. Jota and Mahrez in particular are two players with great underlying numbers that just don't necessarily get the minutes. What I would specifically say on these two, I actually think Mahrez at the start of the season has a slight chance for more minutes, right? Now, how long that lasts for, I don't know. I think the fact that the international break is between game week 3 and 4, which I've mentioned before, is pretty big because it means that gives another 2-week period for players to come back, either to learn tactics, to recover, or to get their fitness up, right? So straight away from game week 4 onwards, we're maybe a little bit more concerned about these players. But Mahrez has had a great pre-season. He's pretty much been playing since the start. And lots of the other, what you would call first team regulars just haven't, right? There's a few defenders, Cancelo and Diaz, that have. Gundogan's played quite a few minutes as well, but Mahrez in particular has played a lot. So I think for the first 3 game weeks, he's pretty much, I don't really want to say nailed, but I think he might be, right? And you're going to get that Norwich fixture, I think. And then later on, you might have to move him on. But if he's like your only player like that, and the rest of them are filled with players that you're not really expecting to get rotated and they'll get good minutes, it's not really a massive issue, I don't think. With Jota, I would be slightly more concerned because I think a lot of people thought, well, Firmino won't be back until late. But Firmino did get minutes the other day, and he did also play really well as well. So I think Jota will start game week 1. And after that, I'm just not sure, right? Burnley, will they put Firmino in there as well? Because Burnley are a bit more physical. And then it's Chelsea, which I would feel like Firmino is more likely to start that game. They could start all 4, like Mane, Salah, Firmino and Jota, but it doesn't actually happen that often. Klopp seems to have reverted back to mostly playing the 4-3-3. So I don't think it's either of these players are a problem or any players like this are a problem, but you have to be realistic and know that at some point you're definitely going to want to get rid of them because you'll get frustrated with the minutes. It's all well and good saying, well, they come on, they play against tired legs. But most FPL managers get frustrated with that very quickly, let me tell you that. But if you've only got like one of these, I think it's fine. 1 or 2, I think it's fine for the start of the season. Don't panic about it too much, but just make sure the rest of the team is solid. So if you've seen my preseason content, you would have heard me talk about Fantasy Football Scout quite a lot. I have partnered with them. I've been using this site literally for like 10 or 11 years. Basically, whenever my first FPL season was, that is when I started using this site. And the members area is great. Now, I've spoken to the boss of Fantasy Football Scout. This 20% off offer should be finishing like by the game week 1 deadline. So you need to get signed up if you want to take advantage of that by the game week 1 deadline, right? You can pay monthly, you can pay yearly, however you want to do it. In a lot of other videos, I've shown you specific tools, but for this one, I'm just going to talk about the kind of massive scope of stuff you can use here. So first of all, there's loads of kind of articles and stuff as well, like members only articles. They've also now added, they're constantly adding new stuff, members videos as well. So we've got some of the top managers. Mark Southerns, I'm sure you've seen him on the FPL show. He'll be doing a video every week. But I just wanted to talk about just literally the amount of tools and stuff that you can use. So you've got player stats, that's exactly here, your expected goals, your shots in the box, all that stuff. Player profiles kind of similar. Then you got it on a team basis, not just on a player basis, and then you got the profiles as well. The matches will show you all the stats for all the individual matches throughout the season. So when a match is finished, you can literally come on here pretty much straight away and look at all the stats for all the players, everything that happened in there as well. You've got comparison tools to compare players. Stats tables is basically where you create your own stats table, so you can have it show midfielders or strikers or everyone. You can show it what kind of stats you want and stuff like that. You've got referee stats. I don't use that too much, but it's in there if you want it. Rate my team. I've shown you that quite a bit, so you can get an idea of which players to transfer out, which players might be better for projected points across the season. You got a fixture ticket which will show you rotation. You can show it which game weeks you want to put it on. There's loads and loads of stuff on there, and they've now got a transfer planner as well. So if you haven't already considered it, make sure you do. Link in the description below. That 20% off offer should finish by the game week 1 deadline, so make sure you get in there quick. You can go monthly or yearly. I'd highly recommend it. Okay, so I'm quite aware that I've talked about Tsimikas in the last few days quite a lot on team selection, streams and stuff like that, but obviously he's still being talked about. The question came up a lot, and I thought this was an interesting one, right? So is it a good idea to go for Mane, Salah and Tsimikas and drop Trent AlexanderArnold? Now, I will say for sure, Trent is locked in my team. So from my point of view, there's no way I would do this. But let me talk about the other side. Maybe if you wanted to do this, obviously you do, because the questions come in, and what you should think about. So with Tsimikas, we know he's only going to play while Robertson's out, right? It doesn't probably really matter how well he plays. When Robertson's fit, he is going to come back in. Let's not kid ourselves otherwise. Klopp has basically said, the kind of word coming out of the club and stuff is that it should be weeks, not months, and that he may be back before the international break, if not afterwards, right? So let's say worst case scenario, or even best case scenario. Let's talk about best case scenario. We get Tsimikas for 3 weeks. Norwich, Burnley, Chelsea, right? So Chelsea's not ideal, but I'd be happy enough to play him in that fixture because I would have played Robertson if I owned him. So that doesn't put me off too much, right? The question you then have to ask yourself is, if you're not stuck, but if you have these 3 players, Mane, Salah and Tsimikas, how are you going to feel about Trent AlexanderArnold after the international break? So then they have Leeds. Okay, it might not be that easy to get a clean sheet, but Leeds, Palace, Brentford, and then Watford are 4 of the next 5 games. The other one is Man City, which is not ideal. Ask yourself how much you're going to want Trent AlexanderArnold. Don't kid yourself and say, I'm just going to go without him. Ask yourself, if you're already thinking about him for your Game Week 1 squad, do you want him for those fixtures? And if you do, what is your plan to get him in? Because obviously if you've got Tsimikas, you can just upgrade him, but it's a big chunk of money. It's 3.5 million. Where are you going to find that from? Maybe it's Mane. Either way, it's going to cost you 2 transfers to do that. So how many other players in your team are you already thinking, well, I'm going to have to transfer him out in Game Week 2, him out in Game Week 3? If that's the case, maybe you just start with Trent instead. I don't mind the Mane Salah double up. Personally, I prefer Salah and Fernandes, but again, that's just my opinion. I don't hate Mane as an option. He's looked good in pre-season. The fixtures are brilliant. He's a great player, and I don't expect him to have the season like he did last year. I'm expecting him to score more, assist more, and stuff like that. But in terms of dropping Trent, I think for the Tsimikas to cover Trent question, Robertson would have to be out for like 6 months for me, because it's only going to be 2 or 3 game weeks, probably at best. It could be longer, but I doubt it. Not from what everyone's saying. I wouldn't want to start without Trent personally, but that's just me. I thought that Sancho was going to have this big buzz, and he probably did when he first kind of signed for Man United, but no one's really talking about him now in terms of starting for our teams, mostly because he hasn't played any pre-season minutes, and obviously a lot of people have got Fernandes, right? They don't want to double up, that's fine. We're talking about Lukaku here. There seems to be a bit of a panic about if he comes in, he's going to mess with our squads. How do I get him in my team? Who do I sell? Do I sell Salah, Fernandes? There's all this stuff, and I've got to be honest, I'm not really worried at all about Lukaku. He's brilliant, right? As somebody that uses, I mean, obviously, I've seen him for Belgium, right? I've seen glimpses from when he's been in the Serie A. Not that much, so I don't watch it. I'm not going to pretend that I do. But I've seen him playing for Belgium. He's a brilliant striker. We know that. Man United possibly should have kept him. Obviously, there was lots of reasons why he went from Man United at the time that he did. I'm sure if it was the Lukaku we see now, Man United would want him back if they could get him back at a decent price, right? But without going into that too much, he's brilliant, okay? He's going to be great for Chelsea. He's going to score plenty of goals. The question is, will the potential of Lukaku mess with our teams? What do you think his potential price will be? I'm not going to speculate too much about price because it doesn't really matter. We'll just see what FPL does. But I would say it'll be 11 to 11.5 million. I don't see him being cheaper. And I don't see him being the same price as Kane and Fernandes and Salah, right? I think that would be... I don't think that would be fair to come in from another league and be that price straight away, even though we know obviously he's done it in the Premier League before, so maybe he will be, but 11 to 11.5, okay? I don't think it messes with our teams at all. I'm recording this on, it is Wednesday, isn't it? I'm losing track of time because it's pre-season. It's Wednesday. Chelsea's first game is on Saturday. I don't even know if he's in the country. I don't even know if he's in London, like ready to sign, do his medical or whatever. I think he's done the first part of his medical, I want to say Monaco. Maybe I've got that wrong, but he's done it somewhere else, right? And then obviously maybe potential quarantine rules and stuff like that. Obviously, Varane's having the same thing right now. Is he going to be available on Saturday for Crystal Palace? Will Tuchel even put him straight in? My thinking is no. Chelsea got more than enough players to win that game. So I don't think he plays in game week 1. And game week 1 is Chelsea's best fixture of the first 6 game weeks, right? So it's Palace, Arsenal, Liverpool, Villa, Spurs, City. Now, you can say that Chelsea can beat all those teams, and I would probably agree with you. They can do well, but their limit for the amount of goals are obviously reduced when you're playing Spurs, Man City. Maybe the Spurs won't be this season. We'll have to wait and see what Nuno does. And Liverpool, right? So you're losing Crystal Palace. Then they've got, apart from maybe Villa, they've got 4 out of 5 bad fixtures, I would say. So I don't see how he messes with our teams at all. I just stick with what I know right now. I get the players that have had some pre-season minutes, some players that are locked in to play every week. I'm not really worried about Lukaku. And also, I am expecting him to play most games. It'll probably be Havertz and Werner, etc. off him. Right? I don't really see too many cases where Lukaku is benched. But let's see in these difficult games what happens. And then we all know about Chelsea's fixture run from game week 7. Southampton, Brentford, Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley. That is a great fixture run. I want Lukaku for that. That's in game week 7, right? At that point, it's like, what, is it September? It's October. October 2nd is when game week 7 starts, or when Chelsea's game week 7 fixture is. So I've got to be honest, I'm not worried about him at all. I don't think he messes with our teams. I don't think he's going to play in game week 1. Let's see if Tuchel says otherwise, but the days are running out. I think it's just a wait and see. If you've got some big hitters in your team, you can easily swap. I've said this a lot of times with Fernandes. One of the reasons he's so good is not because he's such a good option. You can swap into anyone else. Like Lukaku, I don't think will be more than Fernandes' price. So will he mess with our teams? I don't think so. Okay, so what do you think about putting players into our team, game week 1 teams that are 1 week punts? So he's thinking of Benrahma and Havertz. So first of all, I don't think Benrahma's a 1 week punt. Like if you're going for him, he's only 6 million. He's not explosive enough for me to warrant a then big upgrade, right? I think he's 6 million. You just put him in your team and you hold him for a few weeks. I mean, they got Newcastle, Leicester, Palace, Southampton. So I don't think he's a 1 week punt. Havertz definitely is, because if Havertz is going to play up front and then Lukaku comes along, Havertz is still probably going to get good minutes, but in a different position, right? And one of the big draws for a lot of people was that he was going to play number 9. So he's probably going to get that Palace game, but then straight away you're upgrading him. I would treat every transfer as 4 points, even if it's for free. So just ask yourself, is Havertz minus 4 points worth that move to another player? Like, so if you're going to, most people who've got Havertz, they're doing one or two things. They're upgrading to Son or they're upgrading to Mahrez in game week 2. Whichever one you're doing, can Son and Mahrez like match Havertz, even though they've got a difficult opening fixture? I think they can, especially when you take the 4 points into account. So I got to be honest, I don't particularly like this. I don't necessarily mind booking transfers in. Like last year, a lot of us did it with Aubameyang. We kept him for 2 weeks because of captaincy. He had 2 good fixtures. I think it was Fulham and I can't remember the other one. And then we moved him on. So I'm not against it. I just don't know if there's that much upside in Havertz versus Palace, instead of just having the player you want anyway and saving that free transfer. I can't stress enough how even the most kind of calm manager who's very patient, they'll get their head turned by game week 1 to game week 2 transfers, right? Because something will happen. I don't know what it will be. If I did, I'd be a genius. Something will happen with a player that maybe it's mostly with the ones that you were considering. And bearing in mind at this point, we've kind of considered everyone. Someone you were considering, it was a 50-50 call. You didn't put them in. They scored 2 goals or something like that. You know the price is going to go up. You kind of wanted them anyway, and you'll make that move. Lots of that stuff happens to the point where I just don't really like 1 week transfers. I don't like it at any point in the season. I don't really like it at the start of the season. That's just the way I am. If you want to go aggressive, go for it. But out of these 2 players in particular, Havertz, yes. Benrahma, just keep him. He's 6 million. This is a pretty short answer, right? Do you think it's a must to have spare money going into game at 1? I do not, right? Very rarely has this happened to me where I've been genuinely so happy with a team and I've got 0.5 or 1 million in the bank. I prefer, like I'm looking at my team now and I'm just thinking, is there any way I could get 0.5 million out of it? No chance. If anything, I want another 0.5, 1 million in the team. I get why people like to do it because they feel like they can react easier, but you've still got to be within 0.5 million of that player anyway. So I wouldn't hurt my team in order to get that extra money out of it. But of course, if you're happy with the team and it's worth 99.5 million, by all means, keep it, right? Don't look to actively spend it. But most of the time, especially at the start of the season when for most people, their squad value is going to go up. It's very rare that someone that's engaged, their squad value will go down. So this is the time of the season you've got the least amount of money to spend. Although we do have some 4 millions that are probably going to start the season, like Simicast and maybe Amity as well. But still, I wouldn't actively look to do it. It's not a bad thing. It's just not a must either. So this is a good one. I think I may have covered it in another video, but like we've done so many, we'll just go through it again. How many outfield bench players should you have that will actually play? Can you get away with one or should you have at least two? So we're not talking about the goalkeeper. Most people accept that you can have a £4 million keeper on the bench, right? So we're talking about outfield players. Now, I've got a different opinion to a lot of people. I'm okay with having a kind of a bit of a cheaper bench, okay? And not even necessarily cheaper, but less playing time. So if I was playing 3-5-2 or 4-4-2, first of all, I'm more than happy about having a £4.5 million forward player that just isn't going to play. I don't mind that. The chances of getting all three outfield players off your bench, I can't imagine that happens more than a couple of times in a season. And even those times it happens, you've got to ask yourself the question, how much more have you gained by having that money on your first 11 for the other 36 weeks, right? I'm just kind of, I've got to be honest, I'm pulling numbers out of, like you might get like 3 or 4 times, right? That your bench is called upon. But I don't think it happens that often. I can't really recall it too many times. Now, some people will say that we're still in COVID time, so that might be a bit different, and I wouldn't necessarily strongly disagree. Obviously, in some countries, things are getting back to normal-ish. I mean, we're not going to be back to normal for a long time, I would say, but in the UK is one of those places, and I can't imagine we're going to see the chaos that we saw last year when there was loads of matches called off, right? We might see the odd player miss out here and there, but I don't think we're going to see whole matches called off, so we shouldn't get too stuck. So to answer the question, 2 is really nice, right? But I think you can get away with 1. Now, if you're doing 1, preferably it's a defender, right? That you're like a £4.5 million defender. I wouldn't want to trust a 4 million defender for very long because most of the ones that I'm looking at putting into my Game Week 1 squad, I know are short-term options, like 3 or 4 weeks at absolute most. So I wouldn't necessarily want to rely on them. So a 4.5 million defender is good, but even a 4.5 million midfielder is fine. What I would say is if you're going that low on the bench, you need to make sure, preferably, that you've got, and you should be doing this anyway, that you've got starters and players that are going to get minutes. If you've got a bunch of players in your team, you're not even sure if they're going to start, maybe they're Jota Mahrez types, you've got like 3 or 4 of them, and then you've got no bench at all, that is asking for problems. But if you've got a solid team of starters, 80 to 90 minute men, I think you can get away with 1, but 2 would be nicer. So good question, right? Is Vardy being overlooked because of the £7 to £8 million forward options? I would say yes, he is being overlooked. But what I would say is overlooking players is not necessarily a bad thing, right? There is so much value in the kind of 6.5, but mostly 7.5 to 8 million bracket for forwards. It's okay if you don't have someone like Jamie Vardy and you've kind of overlooked them. I think for a lot of people, they see overlooking as like a negative thing, like, oh, I've just not given this player enough consideration. Just remember and kind of be self-aware that we're on Wednesday now. You've only got today and then Thursday. They're the only full days left before the deadline. What's going to happen now, as you try and lock in your team, is you're going to start thinking about all the players that you haven't considered. Why haven't I considered that player? Have I been overlooking this player? I've got him. Why have I not got him instead? That happens to all of us, right? It will definitely happen to me as well. You've got to try and, to a certain extent, block that out. Just quickly try. You can't overthink or think lots about all these players. Why have I not considered him? Okay, I've not considered Vardy's 10.5. I've got Fernandes and Salah. I've got Salah and Mane, whoever it is, and I've got a bunch of good value forwards. There's just no way to fit Vardy in. That's okay. If we're looking at him as an option quickly without the rest of the strategy, so I'm looking at the opening fixtures: Wolves, West Ham, Norwich, City. Right, so Norwich in Game Week 3 is not a bad captain shout, to be honest. So he's not a bad option at all, and Wolves at home. But then if you go for Vardy instead of like a 7.5, 8 million, then let's say you had Son. Right? I know the prices are slightly different. Son's 10 million, not 10.5. But then you've got to go for a cheaper midfielder. And if you're already stuck looking at cheaper midfielders, it's probably easier just to go for the forward instead and get the higher expensive or the more expensive midfielder. I just think, I don't know, but I feel like Vardy's too expensive. I can't believe they put the price up, really, although he did score 187 points again last year. And he did look sharp in the Community Shield. But I think with Iheanacho and Daka there's a real chance that Vardy gets his minutes managed a little bit more this season. And let's not forget, 2 of the opening 4 are Man City and West Ham. So West Ham's not that easy either. So I don't mind Vardy at all, but I think there are better options. I think there are better ways to spend your money. And to answer the question, is he being overlooked? Yes. But I don't think that's always a bad thing. This is going to be one of those questions where I kind of talk around it a little bit before answering it, because I think, again, a bit like the last one, actually, we see a lot of comments that we're overlooking the Chelsea defence, right? If I had to say right now which team is definitely going to get a clean sheet in Game Week 1, Chelsea would probably be my answer, because Man City, great defence, but they're playing Spurs. So even without Kane, they've got Son. That might worry me a little bit. So I would say guaranteed clean sheet, as guaranteed as you can get, is probably Chelsea. So are we overlooking them for that? Possibly. But then they've got those tough fixtures as well. The other problem is the defenders that you really want, i.e. Reece James, probably, unless Koundé comes in. If he does, then maybe Reece James sees maybe some of his minutes managed, possibly. Or Chilwell is the one that most people want, right? But he's probably not going to play in Game Week 1 because they've got the Super Cup. And as far as I know, and by the way, the Super Cup is tonight. If you're watching this video on Wednesday, it's tonight. So you'll have seen who played in that game. But it looks like the likes of Chilwell and Reece James, that might be their first game back. And then they'll probably miss Game Week 1 and then be available for Game Week 2. So again, you're having to put in a player that's like 6 million. They're going to miss their best fixture of the first 6 game weeks. For me, that is a good reason not to go for them at all. If you are looking to go for them because they've got great fixtures, they haven't got great fixtures, but they are a great defence, and you want to hold them long term, and you think that they can get clean sheets in these tougher games, which they absolutely could, then Chilwell's the one. You could bench him for a week, possibly, and hope that he's definitely back for Game Week 2. Or you just go for Rudiger, who's 5.5 million, but he's maybe not that exciting. Last year, he was much cheaper. I think he started at 4.5. No, sorry, he started at 5 last year. And he was a nice way into the Chelsea defence to get plenty of clean sheets. But this year, he's 5.5. His attacking threat is kind of low. Like over the last 4 seasons, he scored 6 goals in total. 3 assists, actually, early on. But I wouldn't expect too many assists from him, right? Maybe they were flick-ons or something like that. I don't know. It was like 3 or 4 years ago. So I like. Then the question is Rudiger with little attacking threat better than like a Luke Shaw or a Luka Dean? I just don't know. I just think at that point you go for the players you know are going to start and have some attacking threat instead. So I really like Chelsea's defence, and again, I'm definitely looking from Game Week 7, but I'd want Chilwell, and I think he's going to miss Game Week 1, and for that reason, as the Dragons would say, I'm out. But if you want someone right now for every single game, it's probably Rudiger, and then maybe switch later. So this one's more of a topic than a question, which I really like. When I ask for the Game Week Preview stuff, it's either a topic or a question. So this one's a good topic would be premium midfielders and cheaper defenders versus premium defenders and a cheaper midfielder. Now, I've notched down the price a little bit for this discussion because I think if we're talking about Salah and Fernandes, you're not going to drop them just to get a higher price defender because they're in for captaincy, they're in for their price point and stuff like that. So I've brought it down to kind of Mahrez's level, right? You could think of Mahrez or Son. I'm just going to go for Mahrez just for ease, right? So Mahrez plus a £4.5 million defender is 13.5 million spent altogether, right? We're not going to worry about which defenders they are for now, which players they are, because that's just in a whole different conversation. I'm just going to give you something to think about when you're deciding on this, right? So 13.5 million. Let's say you wanted to go up to a £6 million defender, the likes of Diaz, Chilwell, etc. Maybe it's a 5.5, but we'll just do 6 for now, again, for ease. That gives you 7.5 to spend on a midfielder. So looking down the list, you've got Pepe, you've got Mount, you've got Jota, you've got Gundogan, you've got Barnes, you've got all the cheaper players like Rafinha, etc. So then the question comes down to, okay, £6 million Diaz plus maybe a 7.5 million Greenwood. Let's just say they're all going to play minutes, even though Greenwood might not. Or then you've got a Mahrez plus a 4.5. Now, I think if you went and like put that into a model, like the Rate My Team tool on Fantasy Football Scout, for example, it probably would favour the more expensive defender and the cheaper midfielder. And the reason for that is the expensive defenders tend to be quite consistent. You're not going to necessarily see many 10 to 15 point hauls, but like a Diaz will probably tick you over with 6 points, maybe a couple of bonus points here and there quite often, right? And the £7.5 million midfielder will also provide you quite a bit of value. I think this depends on the type of manager you are. Because what's going to happen at the start of the season, there will be bandwagons, right? There'll be players that do well, like I spoke about before, that you're going to want. And most of those players are going to be attacking players, okay? It would take something special from a defender for them to suddenly, be wanted by everyone and to be transferred in, right? So if a 4.5 million defender goes mad at the start of the season, then yeah, okay, let's say they score a goal and assist, they get a clean sheet, 3 bonus points, that's 18 points. Someone does that, they're getting bought a lot. But most of the time it's going to be an attacker. So for me, the Mahrez plus the 4.5 leaves you a little bit more flexible in what you're probably going to want to do. But if you've got other transfers in mind, like there's another player that you want to take out, whoever it might be, then having that solid core of a good defender plus a good solid midfielder at 7.5, maybe not a Greenwood or Jota because of minutes, maybe a Barnes or someone like that if you think they're going to get more minutes, whoever it is, right? That is probably going to be on a model, like an algorithm, like the Rate My Team tool. That's probably going to be what comes out on top for consistency. But if those spots, like the Mahrez spot, you want to move around at some point, then I prefer having the higher amount of money in there. Because then if you want to swap to any midfielder that's 9 million or under, you can do it pretty easily. So this is obviously going to depend on the specific players that you pick. But £6 million defenders are good. They're consistently ticking over with points. I like the likes of Chilwell. I just don't like them for game week 1. Okay, so good question. When attackers come up against defenders, do you plan to avoid these types of games? The simple answer for me is no. I don't plan to avoid these games. It's almost impossible to do this for a whole season. Sometimes you will just have picked who you think is the best attacker, and they'll happen to play who you think is the best defender for that spot. So classic example, game week 1. I have got Rafinha in my team. I'm almost certainly not going to bench him. I hate benching attackers. And I've also got Luke Shaw in my team. So the only scenario where they can both get points is if Shaw gets an attack in return and so does Rafinha. Because obviously if Shaw gets a clean sheet, it means Rafinha's done nothing. And if Rafinha scores, Shaw isn't getting a clean sheet, right? But I'm not bothered about that. I'm looking at my team. I'm thinking, okay, I've got a £6.5 million midfielder spot. Who do I want? I want Rafinha. I've got a 5.5 million defender spot. Who do I want? Luke Shaw. Yes, they play each other, but realistically, you are not going to get 11 players in your team every week with 11 returns. It just doesn't happen. So sometimes you're kind of hedging your bets. Well, if Rafinha scores, fair enough. I've not got the Luke Shaw clean sheet, but I've got some points for Rafinha. I mean, obviously, someone else from Leeds could score. Rafinha gets no points and so does Shaw, but that's just the way it is. You've got to look. When you buy a player, it's very rare you're buying them for one game week. So I'm looking at Luke Shaw. I'm thinking, okay, I can probably keep him if I needed to up until like game week 7. And I'm looking at Rafinha. Okay, they got Man United, Liverpool. I don't like that too much. But when you look at their kind of first 10 fixtures, I could possibly keep him for that long. So it's not ideal they play in game week 1 against each other, but it is what it is. I don't care about that at all. Not once have I looked through my player list to figure out when they're playing each other, right? So I've only got Liverpool, Man United, Brighton and Arsenal defenders in my team right now. That could change. I don't care when they're playing my attackers because I've picked them. The reason I've picked those defenders is because they mostly don't play good attackers. And obviously I've put in the attackers because they're good, right? So hopefully over a long stretch of time they will avoid each other. But outside of that, I just don't care. It just doesn't matter. People worry about it too much. I'll put my team up in game week 6. I'll have had hopefully 5 good game weeks, right? Or good game weeks-ish. And in game week 6, I'll have an attacker versus defender. Oh, that team's bad. What are you doing? It just doesn't matter. You pick players for a certain period of time. In my opinion, you just shouldn't be worried if they play each other. You don't want it all the time. Like you wouldn't want like 3 Spurs attackers versus 3 Man City defenders. But it's very unlikely you'd have it that extreme anyway. So there we go. That is it for that one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button. We're getting closer to 190k now. Then we can push to 200,000. This video went out a little bit earlier today because I've got a guest on, which I'm recording with later this afternoon. That should be out this evening, probably around 7 o'clock. It's a bit of a rate my team with someone you're probably not expecting. So we're going to talk through that later on. So keep an eye out for that about 7 o'clock. And then tomorrow I'll also have 2 videos, and obviously we'll have more towards Friday with a deadline stream and stuff like that as well. So please do look forward to that. If you haven't checked out Fantasy Football Scout, link in the description below. Make sure you get in before that 20% off offer is finished as well. That was easy to say. Loads and loads of tools. Like I said during the video, there are so many there you can get used to and start using, which will help you with your FPL team throughout this season as well. And lastly, thank you to everyone that signed up on Patreon. New recruits Jonathan T and Brad Bradley C, thank you for signing up. There's a mini league every single month for those of you on the middle tier or the top tier, and there's loads of other stuff. There's going to be team news article, there's a Q&A every week. There's a bunch of stuff, right? Link in the description below. I kind of forget about it all, but you can check that out as well. I'm going to leave it there. I'll be back later with another video, double upload day, so please do give this one a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you again soon.